2020 and 2021 has changed many things, not least the fact that we're now having a mobile panel that doesn't start with the year of mobile for the first time since 2012 or something like that. Can we kick off by having brief introductions to each of you, near to far, starting with you, Katie?
Sure. I'm Katie Atkinson, founder of The Runway Media. We're a media agency that work mostly with scale-ups and startup brands.
I'm Will Dorling, UK Director of Brand Sales at AdColony. We are a multi-platform mobile business. We work with media agencies and clients running mobile video campaigns.
Hi, I'm Philip Gale. I'm Head of Agency Development at InMobi for Europe. InMobi, for those of you who haven't heard, are one of the larger mobile SSP players in the business.
Hi everyone, I'm Saikala. I work for one of the biggest social casino game developers in Europe, I think, Product Madness, and I look after user acquisition and growth, so all the paid marketing, advertising, app organization, anything that we need to do with mobile to market our product.
Wonderful. We touched upon earlier today in terms of third-party cookie deprecation, but we haven't really discussed the effects of ATT, which Apple brought in earlier on. And many of us would have seen the graph from the Financial Times of how Apple's revenue has increased since putting that in. If you haven't seen it, just look at the stage sections behind me. It goes up. So what I want to find out from you guys is what effect has that had on the rest of the industry? What effect has it had on measurement and attribution, and what effect has it had on, say, buyers and publishers? Katie, let's start with you on that one.
On behalf of our clients, who are mostly D2C, it's been absolutely catastrophic. A lot of these smaller growth clients rely on the closed platforms such as Facebook and Google and Pinterest to build a really, really sophisticated funnel with a very low entry cost. Essentially, with retargeting going away, a lot of their revenue has gone away, and they've had to flip that funnel upside down and invest a lot more in creative in order to bring people in at the top. It's been really, really difficult for them. They're having to invest a lot more now before they can actually get the revenue in the door, and the whole strategy has completely changed.
Well,
yeah, it's been a fascinating change. So you can look at the question from two perspectives. I suppose you've got the user acquisition performance side of mobile. I should actually just say thank you to Piers, because I think we got to about noon and no one had mentioned the year of mobile yet. But he broke the duck on that one. So if we've all got the bingo cards, you can tick off year of mobile. Yeah, so you've got the user acquisition side, which obviously Apple represents a really large part of that app install industry. A portion of that inventory now is much harder to track. Obviously, we've got SCAD, and that's going some way to sort of helping monetize those installs. But you're seeing the cost of the trackable Apple inventory become higher. You mentioned Apple's revenue obviously growing. Apple search ads are doing very well. Thank you very much. And then on the on the brand side of things, targeting specific audiences on Apple has become more difficult, and the cost of doing so has become more difficult. So you've got a portion of users that are trackable and a portion of users that aren't, depending on what operating system they're on. Have they accepted ATT or not? Obviously, users that are trackable are much more valuable, so the cost goes up. That cost goes up for the client, it goes up for the platform. So it's just made the market a whole lot more interesting. And obviously, we've seen on the install side certain clients push revenue towards Android because obviously they're tracking. There's a lot of scale there, so it becomes easier to run campaigns outside. So there's been a whole host of different changes in market. What's interesting is everyone's developing for a future ahead. Everyone's sort of kind of getting 1 foot ahead for when Android make changes, but at the moment it's quite difficult.
On that note, Philip, is in terms of Android, is the industry prepared for that to hit Android as well, or is it still just kind of dealing with what's being implemented on Apple?
I think we're very much dealing with what's in front of us at the moment, and I think one of the other interesting points is M&A activity around mobile, and obviously businesses such as ours, growing and becoming more competent across the whole range of sort of mobile. But the change on Apple's been so great that we're still having very early conversations with clients asking us, how can we start to sort of find scale, or how do we act in this space now? And everyone's still learning what works and what doesn't work.
Awesome. Philip, how are you seeing the changes?
Yeah, I think from the mobile SSP perspective, like we've obviously seen sort of direct impact across the publishers that we're working with, and obviously, from a stats point of view, I think, in terms of addressable, now we're looking at a drop of about 70% of addressable audience on iOS. So it's definitely significant. But I think what's really interesting is that split is actually, if you look at gaming versus non-gaming, you find that the opt-in rate for non-gaming is actually higher. It's about 48%, which I thought was very interesting. I think ultimately what it's meant is that the addressable audience that is available today is of higher value, and I think you would expect that, and I think we're seeing that. And I think what it's doing is it's now just forcing advertisers to look at what a more of a blended strategy is, at how we can target the addressable audience, and how best we can target the audience that's not addressable. And I think from a supply side player perspective, we work very closely with buy side, with agencies, and they come to us and they want to look at how they can make up for that lack of addressability. And so the response to that is looking at how we can take them down a blended contextual versus an audience route. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing now, is that rather than an audience budget and a contextual budget, we're actually going to be seeing those blended into one. And I think SSPs like Mobi and others will play a big part in that, on how they can offer that.
I'd like to add in there that where we have the similar conversation with the demise of the cookie, conversations about putting creative higher up the funnel and context are also happening in the in-app space. So it's great to move back to those, because I think that some of the awesome capabilities of creative and context have been lost, and now we can regain that conversation and actually drive success.
On that note, in terms of creative, has it been underutilized in mobile, Sakala? And what opportunities does mobile offer in terms of creative, which haven't necessarily been explored to date?
I think someone made the point earlier that where the devices are the same, the data sets are the same, creative is the thing that really, really makes the difference, to the point that we won't run any business unless they have a very, very strong creative, because we know that the advertising just won't work.
Sure. And Sakala, same question to you in terms of that creative side of things. In mobile, has it been underexplored to date, and how will it kind of compensate for the lack of data through ATT and anything implemented on mobile?
Sure. Well, creative has always been important for gaming on mobile and all the other platforms as well. We've invested millions and millions finessing our creatives, connecting to the audiences in different countries, culturalizing, localizing them across the globe. Where now, when you remove IDFA and all the measurement goes away, what else can we do? There are the only two levers that are left for us as marketeers: talking through creative and optimizing design of the creative in a better way, plus the tech and automation, of course, and transparency, as in the previous talk as well. From this perspective, what we have done, we've always been at the forefront with creative development, measurement, and optimization. But what we've done also, in addition to that, we now have been working for more than 12 months on building creative stories, building narrative around that. Where the stories didn't exist, we started building stories connecting to those first 2-3 seconds of whether it's direct response or brand. And we connected brand and their response together. So that's pretty much, I can go for hours about creative, you probably don't want to listen, but there's lots of things. There's playable and tracking of the events. There is a 3D and CGI that we've tried this year. It's working really, really well. There was an earlier panel, they talked about TV, like, oh, what are we going to do about TV? But maybe in the UK, maybe not in the UK, because it's very, very controlled and there's so many rules about it. But we've been doing that in Europe, and we've gone live September in the US. It's doing really, really well, especially when you build in these additional things, hooks, that connect TV to real life, live action, additional magic moments with building in CGI into it. it really does bring the performance up. Obviously, you will see the effect of that in the organics and the incremental uplift, but you can clearly see that it's working if the strategy and channel mix and platform mix is done correctly, of course.
Awesome. Interested to see those different creative formats coming together. Sticking in terms of a similar theme in terms of the gaming side of things, how has the rise of gaming in audience, in terms of both the scale of the audience and the diversity within the audience, how has that benefited marketers in terms of gaining their confidence within mobile? Will, we'll go to you for that one.
I think, I'm a big sort of ambassador for gaming as an entertainment channel. We see audiences migrate from traditional media channels all the time, and gaming's having its sort of purple patch at the moment. I think what's really exciting for gaming is you can engage in gaming on any platform, whether it be TV with Netflix launching their gaming offering in the news the other week. Other big TV players are getting into gaming. Obviously, you've got the console and the PC market. The mobile is the device that people have in their pocket, and it's the most easy access to the world of gaming, I guess. So where we see the number of gamers growing at a great rate, which of course is really exciting for brands, because where you're looking to reach your audience and you're looking to reach them in an environment where they choose to spend time and relax and unwind, then gaming offers great potential. And then there's a whole sort of plethora of options as how you connect with that audience in the environment of gaming, whether it be on a mobile, whether it be in an in-game placement, whether it be some kind of metaverse concert in Fortnite or whatever it may be. But the point is that gaming appeals to more people now than it ever has. A lot of that growth is coming from audiences that don't traditionally identify themselves as gamers. So you look within mobile and you look at the casual and hyper-casual segment, made famous by huge brands like Candy Crush, but also a whole host of these new hyper-casual startups from developers that no one's ever really heard of. They're fantastically popular for a short window of time, attracting millions of players, and then those players migrate to different games. So those games are bringing in people that just want to spend 5 minutes of time relaxing, unwinding, playing their favorite game, but they wouldn't identify as a gamer. So that's where we're seeing this exciting growth, and that's where we're seeing a lot of demand from brands that hadn't traditionally thought of gaming as a relevant route to their audiences. So a lot of FMCG brands now are really excited about the scale and the reach available within gaming of audiences that they might have only traditionally sort of focused within consumer titles or TV, for instance. So gaming as an entertainment channel is what's exciting for brands. Where the consumer plays and how they play is the conversation that we all need to have about how we connect with those audiences. Are you trying to do a brand partnership of a new trainer launch in Fortnite, or are you trying to get more people to come and buy your shampoo on the shelves in Sainsbury's? There's an opportunity for all brands within gaming. That's what makes it so exciting. I think just going back to the question about creativity, gaming offers a huge opportunity around creativity. So I would say that creativity is not tapped out yet, and we're not doing it as well as we could in mobile. For me, creativity always comes down to attention. We're looking to drive an audience's attention, to make them want to buy our brand, to make them go and buy a brand, to make them install an app, to make them work with a D2C client. Ultimately, we're looking to shift those behaviors. So we have to focus on how we drive that attention. It starts off with having a quality ad experience. It starts off with having the right placement. It starts off with having good creative. So we're able to bundle all that stuff together. There's very specific examples of how we can take a standard video format and make it interactive in a way that makes that video still very core to the brand's values, but a lot more memorable and exciting than perhaps just seeing that video as a pre-roll or on TV, or as an outstream player. So there's opportunities in mobile that allow you to take an asset and make it more exciting. Gaming being a playable environment, you can make those ads lean in and engaging to help drive and reinforce that attention.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, Will. And I think as well, any ad tech vendor involved in the mobile channel has for a long time been trying to convince advertisers and clients that actually their audience may well be and probably is within the gaming vertical. And the problem is there's been this kind of outdated notion that gaming is for kids, and therefore they wouldn't look at it. And I think it's been definitely helped by lockdown as well. I think we've seen a huge boom in usage of mobile games, and I think people that would not normally have considered to play mobile games are now playing them. And like Will said, they don't consider themselves to be a gamer, but they are in that environment. And esports as well. Behind the scenes, esports is now a sort of multi-million-dollar vertical in itself, and I think that's really helped drive the gaming vertical in a way to be quite sexy now, right? It didn't used to be. Full disclosure, I was a gamer as a kid, and it wasn't very sexy at all. You probably wouldn't tell many people that you were a gamer because they would push you in the corner with the cool kids would be in the other corner. But I think now people are more open to being able to accept that gamers are kind of everyone, and that their audience could well be their target could well be found within a gaming audience.
And I think we're changing as people. I think we're becoming more playful. You look at the rise of gaming appealing to more people, but you can also look at traditional toy brands like Lego, very sort of specifically appealing to kids, now launching adult ranges and spin-offs of popular adult TV content, etc. So, it doesn't just sort of stick to gaming. More people are getting into this kind of play mindset. It exists outside of gaming, but as we seek entertainment and our lives get busier, we look for ways to entertain ourselves. So I think, the broad reach of gaming doesn't just apply to gaming, it applies elsewhere. But, within gaming, it's a very great example of new entrants in that aren't traditional to the gaming space.
Awesome. So in terms of what we're seeing from gaming, we're seeing, again, in terms of the industry as a whole, a very fragmented landscape. And we're seeing that come even more so, and we're seeing a lot of ad tech companies, traditional programmatic companies, looking towards gaming as a way of, okay, let's acquire these gaming firms, and vice versa. We're seeing gaming firms, how can we activate this data and capitalize on these first-party environments that we have? In terms of those environments, what benefits those first-party ecosystems, the walled gardens within the walled gardens, what benefits does those have for the marketers, Philip?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky question, really. I think in terms of would it be a good move? I can certainly see from an ad tech perspective that it might be a good move to go and acquire a game developer company, right? Because owned and operated inventory holds a lot of value. It's also traditionally it's quite difficult to get hold of good quality inventory, whether it be gaming or otherwise on mobile. I think the nature of doing an integration with a publisher or developer to an ad tech vendor is a lot more complex on mobile via SDK. And so it tends to be you choose your partners wisely and you go with that partner. And often it can come at quite a cost to an ad tech vendor. And if you want to start talking about exclusive representation, then that's an even bigger cost and rarely seen these days. So I can see there's an advantage for an ad tech company to say, right, I want to go and acquire a gaming company and really bolster out the inventory that I have. I'm not sure if that's a good move from a game developer company, because then they're putting all their eggs in one basket and you're relying on that ad tech vendor to bring you the revenue. Ultimately, as it relates to privacy and the use of IDFV, there's a potential play there, and I can see that both ad tech and gaming companies could benefit from that, right? To be able to track and target, within their own environment. But ultimately, I think what we're going to see is, in the longer term, we're going to see an ID solution that is going to be compatible with mobile and desktop ultimately, and that will kind of supersede any IDFV solution. I think by the time they've acquired the company, there'll be a unified ID solution that will suit their needs. I hope.
Will, anything to add on that consolidation?
I was reading something recently which just kind of wrapped up the amount of M&A activity around this space, and you've got kind of, some very large businesses now that are equipped at several levels through the funnel, whether they whether they own a gaming studio, whether they also own a DSP and an SSP and an ad exchange and a creative studio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, each business would have its own reasons for pulling together like that. But, it was an incredibly fragmented space several years ago. We've all seen the Luma chart, and sort of mobile and a lot of these kind of niche pocket DSPs and SSPs was very heavy on that side. So consolidation is natural. I think changes in privacy mean it's beneficial for businesses to have, a through-the-line offering to be able to, offer clients reach within first-party environments is obviously great. Be able to have a frictionless route through to ad impressions, be able to offer creative to clients. We talked a minute ago about creative, but actually being able to offer those creative services as a value add is really important. I think the opportunities are great. I think, there will be a lot more M&A as we see these big companies come through. But, there's 5 or 6 companies that tick nearly every box in that offering. And for clients, there is choice. There's choice to work with, smaller independent businesses, but there's choice also to work with larger independent businesses also.
Awesome. In terms of, you touched on it there, in terms of the opportunities for the user, what they can get out of these sort of privacy changes, how have the effect of the fragmentation we're seeing and the changes to measurement and attribution, how will that affect the user? What is the user's reaction to them? Katie, what have you seen?
By user, do you mean the consumer?
Yes,
or do you mean
consumer.
the advertiser? Well, personally, I'm sick of getting a load of ads that I didn't ask for. I want the retargeting to come back. I want to be reminded of what was on my shopping list and in my basket. And I want to have more interesting, relevant stuff. And like as we've seen, the opt-in rates to ATT, I mean, they're anywhere between 5 and 30%, depending on what you read. I think they'll start to increase as people start to ask questions about, wait a minute, why am I seeing now a load of old rubbish?
Yeah.
But we'll wait and see, I suppose.
So Carla, anything that you want to add in terms of how users are either coming to you in terms of social gaming, social casino gaming, how have the industry changes, how's that affected your user base?
Sorry, it's really bad sound.
Sorry, how have the changes in terms of ATT, have you seen an effect of that on the social gaming side at all?
Yes.
Or?
So throughout the gaming and mobile and gaming genres, the ATT opt-in rates are very, very different. So the highest ones probably were mid-core and hardcore games. When the iOS 14.5 went live at the end of April, we were seeing, similar to what you were saying, 38%, but that's diminishing on iOS. With further scan adoption, with further people are being more educated about privacy and what they want and don't want to accept, the ATT pop-up acceptance of the opt-in rate, let's say, is diminishing every day. So it's becoming less and less important to collect that information. On iOS, retargeting pretty much obsolete now, so you cannot be retargeting anymore. You're saying 38%, I should probably buy traffic from you. That's great. But it's affected quite a lot. What we are seeing now, what we're doing now in the team, we are trying to figure out a way how to merge retargeting together with new user acquisition when we can, obviously we need to still segment and use the data that we use, whether it's IDFVs that we mentioned before, which we can't use for marketing, or any other kind of clear data that we can for profiling. But majority of that would be put into no longer not into targeting, but more into building better creatives, better, more personalized creatives, not just for different countries and languages, but also different profile, because even in Britain, every gamer is not the same gamer. People care about different types of features and, I don't know, different progress of the game.
Yeah, I think if I'm honest, I think the majority of users are totally unaware as to what exactly changes have happened. And I think you go and speak with people down the high street, they don't know what the app tracking transparency protocol is. They don't know what iOS 14.5 brought in. I think a lot of them are very used since GDPR of going onto a web page and getting some instructions. Can we use your data? Do you want to drop a cookie? Most people don't fully appreciate or understand what that is, and they don't need to. So I think we're very used to just hitting no, and then that's out the way, right? And now looking at the content, whether it be a game or a web page, and I think that's probably one of the fundamental challenges that we have right now. That and it was mentioned in the first presentation of today about this kind of reinventing the value exchange. It's exactly the same challenge that they have on the desktop world. We have the same thing in the mobile world right now. How do we get more opt-in? How do we get users to want to, or at least be aware of the choice that they're making when they opt in? Because if I speak with any of my family who are not in the advertising industry at all and say, would you be happy sharing your data? They don't know what data is being shared. They immediately think personal data, and they say, well, why would I do that? Can I access it without it? Well, then no, I won't share it. And I think if we're going to work on something, the communication to the users and helping them understand what value they are providing to the publisher and supporting the freemium model and all of that good stuff that we know from the open web and that we've had on mobile that is now about to go away, how do we educate them to get them to opt in and improve that opt-in rate?
I disagree. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm not a big fan of Apple or the whole privacy movement because we've always treated our data like gold. It is pretty much gold, right? I still, though, have to say that I disagree because people will continue evolving. They will continue getting more educated about privacy. They will continue caring about it. Next year, Google will move towards that way. Probably will be less harsh because the majority of their revenue comes from advertising, so they will be kinder than Apple. But in the end, consumer is changing, the landscape is changing. Our device is by default more protected and locked. And I think what needs to change is us advertisers. We need to find new KPIs to measure efficiency with. We need to improve our creative. We maybe, instead of using IDFAs and Google advertising IDs like we used to because we're so spoiled for data for years, we will need to create new metadata where we can nourish our marketing activities and investment and analyze it that way. I mean, one of the things we started looking at in our team right now is how to segregate all kinds of data points. We have a lot of data that we receive, but how to segregate it into, let's say, less sensitive, medium sensitivity, high sensitivity, so that hypothetically in the future we can think about it. Okay, so maybe we should stay away from high sensitivity bucket and create something that is useful for our day-to-day advertising activities, and then maybe we can create those new KPIs for campaign analysis, for creatives, for anything that we might want to do, even a voiceover or whatever, and have that metadata. One of the things we started doing is we created device buckets, for example, because we understand that user behavior is slightly different. Monetization is also different. How often they play is very different as well. Depending on the kind of device they have. Of course, on iOS it's easier because there are very few devices to cluster, but on Android there are thousands. So those are the things like what is the highest denominator of, let's say, purchase rate. Highest denominator on Android is RAM. So higher RAM, put them all in one bucket. Those would be the higher people, let's say higher probability people that you would want to acquire, maybe want to pay more money for them.
Sort of zooming out in terms of how mobile is faring compared to other channels. How is privacy, the new privacy first landscape, how is that affecting mobile in comparison to other channels such as CTV, such as display? Katie?
Well, I think it's really interesting because when you talk about CTV and display, they haven't only ever just relied on user data, they rely on metadata such as weather, currency, contextual signals. And I think while mobile has always been wedded to this kind of user ID and how to target them to get sales and how to kind of manipulate them, I think now mobile might have to expand to look at the bigger picture and work with other data signals in the way that CTV, that out of home, that display has been doing for years and still seeing really, really good results.
I was going to actually, in answering the previous question around addressability, I think a lot of it comes down to relevance and, you know, if you don't know exactly who a user is, but you have an opportunity to show them an ad, I think that, you know, you need to consider what's the environment that you're running in here, or what environments do you need to appear in to appeal to that user. So I think back to when I used to work at The Guardian, people used to spend money with me in the newspaper because it appealed to a high number of ABC1 high net worth, you know, people. And mobile environments have that same capability. You know, you might not necessarily know that it's John who 3 weeks ago, you know, browsed for a BMW and lives in Surrey. You might not have that level of detail, but the point is, if that environment appeals to people like John, then it's still a good environment for your ad. There might be a whole load of other Johns available in that environment, which make that environment highly relevant for you. So we lose some of that tracking, but actually we get to gain some of the freedom around, you know, not trying to specifically target exactly the right person, but actually accepting that the context is right for the people that you want. The environment is of a quality that's brand safe and suitable for your brand, and is that inventory measurable in a way that it gives you satisfaction that you're getting quality for your investment. I agree that there's a great opportunity to take away some of the hyper-targeting and look more at contextual environments, look more at creative to drive relevance. By that, I'll give you a really good example of a client that we work with that has 2 pieces of different video creative, and we're unsure as to which piece of video creative was best to run in the environment. So we're able to deliver an interactive video that allows the user to choose which video they want to see. You know, they're going to see an ad, you know, it's a free game and that game is funded through advertisers. So they're going to watch that ad, but at least they get to choose which ad they watch. It makes that experience more relevant to them. It gives them a feeling of satisfaction that they have had choice and that they've been consenting towards the ad that they've watched. And, you know, if they want to, they can actually go and replay and watch the other ads, so the client's generating additional plays. So it's a great way of creativity driving relevance, but also sort of helping with the privacy situation that the consumer has control over their advertising experience. So there's loads of opportunities that come out around sort of the restrictions, I suppose, that you know, some of the privacy changes are seemingly giving to us. But actually, as you adapt, you open up new opportunities to help clients do their job even better.
Yeah, it's less true on the consumer side, but in terms of that fragmentation and the opportunities it brings, one argument that could be held is that it helps transparency in the sense that it's always been an issue within the advertising industry. But how have the changes? How will the changes affect transparency within the mobile industry, Philip?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's definitely a good step towards transparency, and you know, we've been talking about transparency for a long time in the year of mobile, in those 4 or 5 years of mobile. Transparency was all about app transparency because we didn't actually have that in the early days. Transparency now is really, you know, a bit more mainstream, the same as the other verticals, which is now about sort of dollar to dollar client brand budget transparency as it goes through the whole supply chain, right? I think everyone's been talking about transparency, but I think the challenges are that, you know, there are many players that are involved in this rather complex supply chain, and I think for a long time each of those players have had a vested interest to be slightly less transparent than what they feel like ultimately what they should be, and so. I feel like there's a big opportunity now for certainly agencies and advertisers to review and look at their SPO as a whole, whether it be mobile or other channels as well, and look at what solutions and benefits they're getting from each of those partners, not just the DSP, which is the kind of the first platform that they actually have contact with, but ultimately all of the technology players behind that platform, like SSPs and the verification tools and any other business that's part of that SPO, and actually, you know, form a first-hand relationship with those businesses and be more selective. Right? Programmatic has been great. It's given us this. Everyone's connected to everyone else, and we have scale everywhere. and we had scale with data, third-party data. Everything feels like it's kind of now shrinking a little bit and consolidating a little bit, and I think it's probably a great opportunity for buyers to really look with a kind of, a fine-tooth comb on who they want to partner with and what those partners have available to offer, and make informed choices.
Awesome. Final question to you guys in terms of how mobile looks going forward in terms of the privacy-first future, and how it can be used in conjunctions with other channels and as a standalone thing. Any thoughts on that final one?
I think it's a fascinating question. We're talking about privacy on our most private device that we use for practically every function of our life, and I think that advertising has to evolve, and we talked about consolidation in the market. I think that consolidation helps because it makes the fragmented marketplace smaller in terms of the numbers of partners that have been dealt with. But for the end user, I think it comes down to, have they got control over their privacy, and does controlling that privacy enhance or sort of denigrate their experience on mobile? So for instance, you enable all the privacy settings on your device, but actually you see a ton of irrelevant ads, and it kind of ruins in some way your online experience. That user has to go and find that happy balance. So I think at the moment we're in very much there seems to be a groundswell towards privacy, and I think a lot of privacy options are going to be offered, and I think consumers are going to, over time, work out what level of privacy suits them, and then the media industry is going to adapt to that in a way that, whether it comes down to a contextual and a creative route, or actually whether data supplies prove to be the option moving forward. But I think at the moment we're very much in that exploration phase. There will be more privacy coming up. There will probably be more fragmented ad experiences for some users. Who knows? But it's going to be an up and down ride for the next few years for sure.
Looking forward to the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Well, that draws us out of time for this panel. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on stage, and let's hear it for our panelists.